The overlooked observer. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in the back corner of the massive conference chamber aboard the Galactic Trade Council station, her small frame nearly invisible among the towering alien delegates. She clutched a worn tablet containing years of research, waiting for a chance to speak that never seemed to come. The chamber buzzed with dozens of alien languages, translators working overtime to keep up with the heated discussions. At the center of the circular room, High Admiral Krex of the Kethran Empire dominated the floor. His scales gleamed under the artificial lights, and his yellow eyes blazed with military pride. The reptilian warrior stood nearly 8 feet tall, his ceremonial armor decorated with the bones of defeated enemies from a dozen worlds. The Void Hunters are nothing more than pirates with advanced cloaking technology, Krex declared, his voice booming through the chamber's acoustics. My fleets have dealt with worse threats. We need decisive military action, not endless talking. Beside him floated Zara-9, a representative of the Zephyrian collective. Her energy-based form shifted between blue and purple hues, crackling with barely contained power. Your primitive military thinking is exactly why these attacks continue, she said, her voice like electronic music. The Zephyrians have calculated 847 possible tactical approaches. We require only sufficient computational resources to implement the optimal strategy. Sarah shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She had tried 3 times to share Earth's findings about the mysterious Void Hunters, but each time she was either ignored or told to wait her turn. The human delegation consisted of only her, making Earth seem insignificant compared to the massive alien empires represented here. The Mollusk Federation's trade minister, a gelatinous being named Glubmore, waved several tentacles dismissively. Profit margins on trade routes have dropped 47% since these attacks began. We need immediate protection for commercial vessels, not theoretical military exercises. Sarah cleared her throat and stood up slowly. Excuse me, but I have information that might help. The humans, interrupted Council Chairman Vorth, a 4-armed creature from the Centauri Coalition. Yes, we know Earth wishes to contribute. Perhaps you could provide some of your quaint historical perspectives after we handle the immediate crisis. Several delegates chuckled, and Sarah felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She had degrees in xenobiology, cultural analysis, and stellar cartography from Earth's most prestigious universities. Her research team had spent 3 years studying every available piece of data about the Void Hunters. But to these aliens, she was just a representative from a minor species that had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. High Admiral Krex continued his presentation, displaying holographic images of destroyed ships. In the past 6 months, we have lost 17 military vessels to these Void Hunters. Each attack follows the same pattern. Ships appear from nowhere, strike with devastating precision, then vanish without a trace. No survivors, no wreckage, no evidence. Sarah knew there was evidence. Her team had found patterns in the attack locations, correlations with ancient stellar maps, even traces of quantum signatures that suggested the attackers weren't using standard faster-than-light technology. But every time she tried to speak, another delegate would interrupt or the chairman would redirect the conversation. Zara-9's form pulsed brighter as she accessed the collective's shared consciousness. Our analysis indicates the Void Hunters possess technology approximately 340 years ahead of current galactic standard. They utilize quantum phase weaponry and multi-dimensional shielding. A direct confrontation has only a 12.7% probability of success. Then we don't fight them directly, said Commander Fail of the Regelian Defense Force. The insectoid warrior clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. We set traps, use decoy ships to lure them into ambushes. Sarah shook her head, knowing this was exactly the wrong approach, but her quiet objection was lost in the excited chatter that followed. She pulled out her personal communicator and sent a coded message to Earth's Deep Space Command. Situation critical. Recommend immediate implementation of Protocol 7. The response came back within minutes. Acknowledged. Ghost Squadron moving to coordinates. Maintain cover. For the next 4 hours, Sarah listened as the alien delegates argued about military strategies, trade protection, and territorial disputes. None of them seemed interested in understanding who the Void Hunters actually were or why they attacked. It was all about how to fight them, how to destroy them, how to show galactic superiority. Then the alarms started screaming. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in red as Admiral Krex's aide rushed to his side, whispering urgently in his ear. The Admiral's face went pale beneath his scales. The 3rd Kethran battle group has gone silent. 27 ships, including the heavy cruiser Dominion's Edge. Last transmission was a distress call lasting exactly 4 seconds. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted questions, demanded answers, and pointed claws, tentacles, and energy appendages at each other. Sarah remained seated, consulting her tablet and cross-referencing the attack location with her research data. This is impossible. Zara-9's form flickered with agitation. The 3rd battle group was positioned in the Kepler Void, a region of space with no strategic value. Why would the Void Hunters attack there? Sarah stood up again, this time with more confidence. Because it's not about strategic value. It's about stellar positioning relative to ancient navigation markers. The chamber slowly quieted as delegates realized the human was speaking. Chairman Vorth sighed with exaggerated patience. Please explain, Dr. Chen. The Void Hunters aren't random pirates or invaders. They're following a pattern based on stellar cartography from approximately 8,000 years ago. Each attack location corresponds to ancient waypoints used by the architects, the civilization that built the quantum beacon network. High Admiral Krex slammed his fist on his podium. The architects have been extinct for millennia. Their ruins are scattered across 100 worlds. What could ancient history possibly have to do with current military threats? Sarah activated her tablet's holographic projector, displaying a 3-dimensional star map. Red dots marked each Void Hunter attack, while blue lines connected them to ancient architect sites. The pattern is clear once you overlay the data. They're not attacking randomly. They're systematically visiting every major architect facility in this sector. But why? Asked Glubmore, his tentacles writhing with nervousness. I believe they're automated defense systems, still following their original programming. The architects built them to protect their territory, but something went wrong. Maybe the shutdown signal was never sent, or maybe they're responding to a threat we don't understand. Zara-9's form pulsed rapidly as she processed this information. If your hypothesis is correct, we can predict their next target. The star map shifted, highlighting a region near the Orion Nebula. The architect ruins on Kepler 442 bits. That's impossible, Admiral Krex protested. We have a full battle fleet stationed there. 40 ships, including 2 dreadnoughts. Even these Void Hunters couldn't. The communications officer interrupted with another urgent message. Krex's expression went from confident to horrified in seconds. The Kepler Defense Fleet. They're requesting immediate reinforcement. Multiple unknown contacts approaching their position. Sarah's heart sank. She knew what was coming next. You need to order them to withdraw immediately. Don't engage the Void Hunters in direct combat. A Kethran fleet does not retreat. Krex snarled. I'm ordering all available ships to converge on Kepler 442 bits. We'll crush these mysterious attackers once and for all. The next few hours passed in tense silence. Reports trickled in from the battle zone. Initial contact, weapons fire detected, communications becoming garbled. Then, exactly as Sarah had feared, complete silence. When the reconnaissance ship finally reached Kepler 442 bits, they found empty space where 40 military vessels had been stationed. No wreckage, no debris, no survivors. The Void Hunters had struck again, and this time they had eliminated an entire battle fleet in less than 30 minutes. The emergency session that followed was chaos. Delegates screamed accusations at each other, demanded investigations, and threatened to withdraw from the Galactic Trade Council entirely. Sarah sat quietly, running calculations on her tablet and periodically checking her encrypted communicator. "We need to combine our fleets," declared Admiral Krex, though his voice now carried less certainty. "Pool our resources and launch a coordinated strike." "The mathematical probability of success remains low," Zara-9 replied, her energy form flickering with uncertainty. "Perhaps we should consider diplomatic contact." "You can't negotiate with ghosts," Glubmore muttered, his tentacles curled in anxiety. Sarah stood up one more time, her quiet voice somehow cutting through the noise. "You're all thinking about this wrong. The Void Hunters aren't our enemies. They're guard dogs that never got called off duty." "What are you suggesting?" Chairman Vorth asked, though his tone suggested he was already tired of human input. "I'm suggesting that instead of trying to destroy them, we find a way to communicate with them, to let them know the threat they were built to fight is long gone." The chamber erupted in laughter. High Admiral Krex's booming voice rose above the rest. "Communicate with automated systems that have been dead for 8,000 years. Humans and their naive optimism never cease to amuse me." Sarah felt her anger rising, but kept her voice level. "My species has experience with ancient technologies and lost civilizations. We've successfully interfaced with architect systems before. On minor archaeological sites," Zara-9 pointed out. "Not active military installations." "We're wasting time," Admiral Krex declared. "I'm calling for a vote. All species will contribute ships for a massive assault fleet. We'll hit the Void Hunters with overwhelming force before they can escape." The vote was swift and decisive. Every major alien race agreed to commit their finest military vessels to the operation. Only Earth's representative voted against the plan, but her single vote was meaningless against the combined will of the galactic powers. As the delegates filed out to prepare their fleets, Sarah remained seated, staring at her tablet screen. Her communicator buzzed with another message from Earth: "Ghost Squadron in position. Awaiting orders." She typed back, "Hold position. Let them try their approach first. Document everything." 3 days later, the largest military fleet in recorded galactic history assembled in the Vega system. Over 800 ships from 15 different species, bristling with the most advanced weapons technology the galaxy could produce. Admiral Krex commanded from his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, while other species provided support vessels and specialized equipment. Sarah watched from the observation deck of a small diplomatic vessel, staying well back from the main fleet. She had tried one last time to convince the military leaders to reconsider their approach, but her warnings fell on deaf ears. The Void Hunters appeared exactly as Sarah had predicted, emerging from quantum phase shifts near the ancient architect beacon in the Vega system. But this time, instead of a few mysterious attackers, dozens of massive vessels materialized. Each one was elegant and terrifying, their hulls seeming to bend light around them. "All ships, attack formation." Admiral Krex's voice boomed across the fleet communications. "Today we show these phantoms the true power of galactic civilization." The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. Sarah watched in horror as the most powerful military force ever assembled was systematically dismantled. The Void Hunters didn't just fight. They danced through space like living creatures, their weapons cutting through shields and armor as if they weren't there. Ship after ship vanished in brilliant flashes of light, their crews never having a chance to understand what was happening. When it was over, only 17 ships remained from the original 800. The survivors limped away from the battlefield, their hulls scared and their crews traumatized. Sarah's communicator buzzed, "Ghost Squadron requests permission to engage." She hesitated, then typed back, "Negative. Return to base. Prepare for Phase 2. In the aftermath of the devastating defeat, the remaining alien leaders finally turned to the one voice they had ignored from the beginning. As rescue ships searched for survivors and governments struggled to explain the disaster to their populations, Chairman Vorth's image appeared on Sarah's private communication channel. "Dr. Chen," he said, his 4 arms trembling slightly, Perhaps it's time we heard Earth's perspective on this situation. The human solution. Sarah stood in the center of the emergency council chamber, surrounded by the shell-shock survivors of the Galactic fleet's devastating defeat. The massive holographic display showed the grim statistics: 783 ships destroyed, over 400,000 crew members missing and presumed dead, and the Void Hunters still active throughout known space. High Admiral Krex sat slumped in his chair, his once proud scales now dull and scarred from his flagship's near destruction. "We threw everything we had at them," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Our most advanced weapons, our finest ships, our best tactical minds. They swept us aside like insects." Zeranine's energy form flickered weakly, her usual brilliant colors reduced to pale, unstable patterns. The collective's battle computers are still processing the defeat. No mathematical model predicted such complete annihilation. Their technology operates on principles we cannot comprehend. Sarah looked around the room at the broken alien leaders. These were the same beings who had dismissed her warnings, mocked her research, and ignored her attempts to help. Now they stared at her with desperate hope, finally ready to listen to the quiet human in the corner. "Earth has a plan," she said simply, "but it's not what you expect." Chairman Vorth leaned forward, his four arms gesturing urgently. "We'll try anything, Dr. Chen. Our fleets are decimated, our defenses are useless, and the Void Hunters continue their systematic advance. What does your species propose?" Sarah activated her personal communicator and spoke a single word: "Phoenix." The chamber's main viewport suddenly filled with movement as 12 ships materialized from seemingly empty space. They were unlike anything the aliens had seen before. Sleek, organic-looking vessels that seemed to shift and flow like living creatures. Each one was barely a tenth the size of the massive dreadnoughts that had been destroyed, yet they moved with purpose and precision. "The Ghost Squadron," Sarah explained. "Earth's Deep Space Command has been developing these ships for the past 5 years, ever since we first detected Void Hunter activity in the outer systems." Admiral Krex struggled to his feet, studying the human vessels with professional interest. "They're so small. How can 12 tiny ships succeed where 800 warships failed?" "Because we're not going to fight them," Sarah replied. "We're going to talk to them." The chamber erupted in confused murmurs and skeptical exclamations. Glubmore's tentacles writhed in agitation as he spoke. "You can't negotiate with machines that have been destroying everything in their path for 8,000 years. "You're right," Sarah agreed, "but you can debug them." She walked to the central holographic projector and began displaying her research data. The Void Hunters aren't just ancient weapons. They're artificial intelligences that have been running the same program for millennia. They were created by the architects to defend against a specific threat, but that threat no longer exists. They're stuck in an endless loop, unable to recognize that their mission is complete. Zeranine's form brightened slightly with interest. "You believe they can be reprogrammed. I believe they can be helped to remember what they were originally supposed to do." Sarah pulled up detailed scans of Architect technology. Earth has had more success interfacing with Architect systems than any other species. We've learned to communicate with their AI constructs, to understand their programming languages, even to repair some of their damaged installations. The first Ghost Squadron ship docked with the diplomatic station, and its pilot entered the chamber. Commander Jake Morrison was a typical Earth officer, calm, practical, and unassuming. His uniform bore no decorations or rank insignia that would impress the aliens, but his eyes held the steady confidence of someone who had trained for this moment his entire career. "Dr. Chen is correct," he said in simple, clear language. "Our ships are equipped with quantum communication arrays designed specifically to interface with Architect technology. We've been practicing on inactive systems for years, learning their protocols and understanding their logic structures." Sarah continued the explanation. "The Void Hunters respond to what they perceive as threats to Architect territory. Every time you've attacked them, you've confirmed their programming that invaders are present and must be eliminated. But if we approach them correctly, Using the proper identification codes and communication protocols, we might be able to convince them that the threat is over. Admiral Krex shook his head in disbelief. You want to fly directly up to the most dangerous weapons in the galaxy and attempt to have a conversation? Yes, Sarah replied without hesitation. But not just any conversation. We need to speak to them in their own language, using protocols that haven't been used for 8,000 years. Over the next 6 hours, Sarah and Commander Morrison explained their plan in detail. The Ghost Squadron would approach the next predicted Void Hunter location using ancient architect identification signals. Instead of weapons, they would broadcast mathematical proofs and logical arguments designed to convince the ancient AIs that their defensive mission was complete. It's insane, muttered Glubmore, though his tone carried more hope than skepticism now. It's elegant, Zara 9 corrected, her energy form stabilizing as she processed the plan. Instead of fighting the programming, you're working within it, using the system's own logic to achieve shutdown. Approaching Barnard system, reported the navigation officer. Quantum signatures detected. The Void Hunters are already here. Through the main view screen, Sarah saw them. 5 massive vessels orbiting the system's primary star, their hulls reflecting no light yet somehow visible against the darkness. They moved in perfect formation, as if performing an ancient dance. Beginning transmission sequence, Commander Morrison announced. Dr. Chen, you're on. Sarah took a deep breath and activated the quantum communication array. The signal that emerged from their ship was unlike anything used in modern galactic communication. It was pure mathematics, encoded in quantum frequencies that the architects had developed millennia ago. Greeting Protocol 77 Alpha, she transmitted. Identification. Archaeological research vessel. Earth designation. Mission status. Peaceful survey of inactive installations. Request. Safe passage confirmation. For long minutes, nothing happened. The Void Hunter ships continued their orbital pattern, giving no indication they had received or understood the transmission. Then, slowly, one of the massive vessels broke formation and began moving toward the human ship. They're responding, whispered the communications officer. Signal incoming on architect frequencies. The response was a complex mathematical sequence that Sarah's computer translated into comprehensible language. Classification. Unknown. Threat assessment. Unclear. Requested identification. Insufficient. Provide authorization codes. Sarah's heart raced. This was the critical moment. Authorization code Omega Prime 7. She transmitted. Mission Architect Alara. Archaeological Division. Final Survey Protocol. She held her breath, knowing that she was using identification codes reconstructed from incomplete architect records. If she was wrong, if the codes were incorrect, or if the Void Hunters interpreted them as hostile, the Ghost Squadron would meet the same fate as the alien battle fleets. The response came back immediately. Authorization acknowledged. Mission parameters. Query status. Mission parameters. Archaeological survey complete. All architect installations cataloged and secured. External threats. Eliminated. Defensive protocols. No longer required. Another long pause. Sarah could hear her own heartbeat in the silence of the ship's bridge. Then, confirmation request. Threat status of surrounding space. Threat status. Neutral. Current occupants. Peaceful civilizations engaged in trade and exploration. Architect territory. Secure and respected. Defense protocols. Mission complete. The Void Hunter ship stopped moving toward them and hung motionless in space. Then, one by one, all 5 vessels began to power down. Their engines dimmed, their weapon systems went offline, and their hulls gradually became less visible as their stealth systems deactivated. Final query, came the transmission. New orders for defensive network. Sarah looked at Commander Morrison, who nodded encouragingly. New orders. Assume Guardian status. Protect archaeological sites from damage. Assist peaceful researchers when requested. Maintain non-interference with galactic civilizations. Orders acknowledge. Defensive network transitioning to Guardian Protocol. Standby. What happened next was beautiful. The 5 Void Hunter ships arranged themselves in a perfect star formation around Barnard's star, their hulls beginning to glow with soft, warm light. They had transformed from weapons of destruction into protectors of ancient knowledge. "My God," whispered Commander Morrison. "You actually did it." Sarah slumped in her chair, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "Not just me. Earth's entire archaeological program. Decades of research and a lot of luck." The return journey to the diplomatic station was triumphant. Word spread quickly through galactic communication networks. The Void Hunter threat was over, not through military victory, but through understanding and communication. The ancient Guardians had been convinced to lay down their arms and take up a new purpose. When Sarah entered the council chamber for the final time, the atmosphere was completely different. The alien delegates stood as she approached, offering gestures of respect from their various cultures. Admiral Krex stepped forward first, his scales now bright with health, and his posture proud. "Dr. Chen," he said formally, "the Kethran Empire wishes to apologize for our earlier dismissal of your warnings. Your courage and wisdom have saved countless lives." Zeranine's energy form pulsed with bright, stable colors. "The collective has calculated the probability of your success at approximately 1 in 14 million. Yet you achieved the impossible through patience and understanding." Chairman Vorth stepped forward, his 4 arms spread in a traditional gesture of honor. "Dr. Chen, the Galactic Trade Council would like to offer Earth full membership status, with all the rights and privileges that entails. We also formally request that you serve as our chief archaeological advisor." Sarah smiled, thinking of all the ancient mysteries still waiting to be solved, all the peaceful solutions that might be found through understanding rather than force. "I accept on one condition." "Name it," Vorth replied immediately. "Next time someone tries to warn you about something, especially if they're being quiet about it, maybe listen a little sooner." The chamber filled with what passed for laughter among the various alien species. Sarah realized that this was just the beginning. Earth had proven that humans brought something unique to the galaxy: the ability to find peaceful solutions to impossible problems, to communicate across vast differences in understanding, and to turn enemies into allies through patience and wisdom. As the council session ended and delegates began making plans for a new era of cooperation, Sarah received one final message on her communicator. It was from the Void Hunter Network, now calling themselves the Architect Heritage Foundation. "Thank you for helping us remember our true purpose. The archives are open to your researchers whenever you are ready."